Yeah, I can do a mail work, do it like I need to do it, you know.
Hello, can you all hear me? Am I speaking loud enough, Daryl? Are we on the air, as they say? Okay. Good morning. What a beautiful morning, is it not? It's just gorgeous today. I want to welcome everybody to the Auburn Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, which is located on occupied ancestral land of the Muskogee Creek Nation. My name is Larry Moore, and I will be serving as service associate today for this service. We welcome you. We know you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, different backgrounds. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. We hope you will find ways to provide outreach to others in our congregation, in our local community, and in our world community. So, on behalf of the members of this fellowship, I extend a special welcome to all visitors who are joining us for the first time, and to those of you who still feel like visitors. If you have not already done so, please fill out our visitor book at the front near the greeters, or you can do it digitally by visiting our website at auuf.org/visitor. You may also contact our minister, Reverend Chris Rothbauer, and his contact information is minister@auuf.org, with any questions or concerns you may have. As we prepare for our service this morning, please remember to turn your phone or any other electronic devices that you may have to silent. So let us move into the service, willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connections in all its forms.
Hello. Our opening words are from Martha Kirby Capo. As we enter this sacred, silent space, let us renew both our commitment and our covenant. There are those among us who have endured of loss this past week. May their hope be uplifted in the community of faith. There are those among us who have struggled with hardship this past week. May they find renewed strength in this community of faith. There are those among us who have wrestled with questions that seem to have no answer in the past week. May they find sanctuary during their search in the community of faith. There are those among us who have cherished an unexpected joy in the past week. May their rejoicing be celebrated in the community of faith. As we commit to continue our free and responsible search for truth, may we covenant to honor the many paths that have led us to this community of faith.
Majesty
have a real cute new greeter over here. All right. We light our chalice this morning with these words from Sean Trapp. Our chalice reminds us that the fire within ourselves is the same fire that illuminates the universe. It is our reminder that all is connected, even though the space of the void is vast, and our spirit and our experience here is but a blip in the cosmic timeline. This flame is our promise that in our smallness, in our short time on this earth, that we live intently and deeply with love for one another, with honesty and integrity, to be guided by rational thought and critical thinking, and that with a sense of shared responsibility. For as the late astronomer Carl Sagan reminded us, this pale blue dot is the only home we've ever known. As is our tradition, we also light a candle in solidarity with those families separated at our southern border. Our opening hymn this morning is number 316 in the gray hymnal, Tradition Held Fast. One of the ways that we proclaim the warmth and caring of our community is by sharing joys, concerns, and milestones. If you are joining us virtually, we invite you to type your joy, concern, or milestone in the YouTube chat box. We invite those in person to, one at a time, drop a pebble into our communal bowl during the music for the meditation. Thank you to all that shared their joys, concerns, and milestones this morning. These joys and concerns were submitted in advance for sharing. A concern. Paula Martinson shares that her husband, Tom, was recently in the intensive care unit and is now receiving hospice care at home. They are not asking for any assistance at this time, though they would love to receive cards from members of the fellowship. So thinking about Paula and her family. May all the joys, concerns, and milestones of this community, those shared aloud and those held in silence, be received into the care and concern of all present.
Please join me in the spirit of meditation in whatever way feels right with these words from Samuel A. Trumbore. What an unearned blessing to delight in the calming peace of this space, to hear the robin's song at daybreak, to feel the warmth in this space, and to enjoy the promise almost upon us. Each moment of wakefulness has so many gifts that offer energy and delight, yet too often they seem unavailable as the weight of our troubles press down on us. The threats of our well-being, real or exaggerated, feel like mosquitoes in the night looking for a place to land. Minds become captive to rising floodwaters, forceful, murky, threatening, and ominous. Even in moments of great danger, the direction of attention is a choice. Fear can dominate the mind, binding it like a straitjacket, or love can unbind it and open it to resources and opportunity. The soil of the mind can be watered with kindness. The thorns can be removed one by one to appreciate the buds ready to flower. Great possibilities await us if all we can see is the cliff before us. The grandeur of life of which we are a part scatters rainbows in every direction, even as the deluge approaches. Holding reality and possibility together is the holy, hope-filled work of humanity, if we choose it again and again in love. Blessed be.
The light of our chalice would soon flicker and die without the oil that nourishes its flame. And just as this flame cannot burn without oil, This religious community cannot survive or thrive without the financial as well as the personal support of its members and friends. The oil that keeps the flame of our liberal religious faith alive and fuels the shared mission and ministry of this fellowship. So, let us now give freely and generously an offering to sustain and strengthen our shared religious community, a community of memory, hope, faith, and love. For we are now the keepers of its flame that burns for justice, its stream of beloved community, its vision of a world made whole. To make a donation online via PayPal, please visit our website, auuf.org/donate. If you are writing a check, please make your check payable to AUUF with a note on the memo line about whether it is for the offering or your pledge, and drop it in the offering bowl, or you can mail it to AUUF, P.O. Box 669, Auburn, Alabama 36831. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Praise thee for these life's holy times, moments of brief days of delight, triumph and failure intertwined, shaping our vision of a Thanks be for these both birth and death, life in between with meaningful, holy because the quickened breath we celebrate life's interval. Thanks be for these who question why, who know all motives to obey, those who know how to live and love, comrades who share His holy way.
Our reading today is by Mark Ward, entitled Grounded Someplace Deeper. Reason is an important tool, sure, an essential arbiter of truth claims about the world. But religion is grounded someplace deeper, where we experience the joy of living and are connected intimately with all that is. Religion is an entirely human experience, but one that we get in touch with using some pathway other than intellectual argument. In religion, we seek to address not just what is, but also what we hope for and what we dedicate ourselves to. We rely on it to navigate the shoals of love and grief, compassion and estrangement, gratitude and disappointment, and mystery and wonder. As David Rothbauer suggests, religion deserves reverence. It requires a vocabulary, a theology, and this theology demands no intervention of unearthly forces, but invites us to open ourselves to a different way of living and learning. It considers the human, a niche in vast, intertwined plenitude of being. And what is this niche, or niche? We are fragile, infallible source for whom just being is a blessing and love is a pole star.
Well, that's just what the Bible says. That was a response I got so often as a kid. There were just certain doctrines in my childhood church that weren't allowed to be questioned. Christianity was a religion unlike any other religion, the true faith, and anyone else were just heretics. The Bible is literally true, every word of it a revelation from God on how to live our lives, even the two conflicting creation stories and the four conflicting gospels. The earth is only 6,000 years old and did not occur through a cosmic Big Bang, nor did life emerge through Darwinian evolution. Homosexuality is sinful and gay people need to repent. And abortion is wrong in all cases, period. And if it didn't make any sense, maybe we needed to just pray to God and have a little faith in mysteries we might not yet understand. In fact, doubt itself was sinful in my church, and I certainly wasn't supposed to seek out alternative views from other sources that disagreed with my religion. So for much of my childhood, my mind was completely closed to any perspective other than the one I already had. I grew up with the perspective that most people in the world were probably going to hell because they didn't believe the right way, the way that agreed with our narrow interpretation of scriptures written thousands and thousands of years ago in very different contexts. In fact, many of the questions that I entertain today would not have occurred to me because I had such a myopic view of religion and spirituality. I've said many times that my sexuality was what originally led me to start questioning those views. But I just came to the conclusion initially that I was sinful and deprived and just destined for an eternity of misery. What really pushed me to start questioning the very beliefs I held as unquestionable was a chance visit to the website of a self-professed agnostic. Back in the early days of the internet, when there were so few websites that a quick Yahoo search, yes, I know I'm showing my age here, might bring up small and obscure voices in the midst of big ones. That site led me to a classic in the field, British philosopher Bertrand Russell's Why I Am Not a Christian. Though I now have some quibbles with Russell, there's no denying that reading his reasoning was a revelation to me. Russell asked questions I dared not even consider before, questioning the very foundations of Christian religion right down to the centrality of the crucifixion, the divinity of Jesus, and perhaps most heretical, the very existence of God. It had not even occurred to me that I could be an atheist. So Russell was an eye-opener to me and ultimately one of the reasons I decided to pursue a degree in philosophy. What I now realize attracted me was the use of reason in Russell's arguments and the fact that he was not scared to doubt anything. I became convinced that this new way of thinking might just be my salvation, and over the course of the next decade, I soon found myself questioning the ethics, politics, and social order I had grown up with as well. So it's no surprise that I eventually found my way to Unitarian Universalism, which has sometimes been called the religion of reason. From our earliest days, when Spanish scientist and theologian Michael Servetus applied reason to unquestionable religious tenets like the doctrine of the Trinity, we've made a name for ourselves as the place where your doubts and your questions are cherished and raised up as sacred rather than ridiculed and suppressed, as was my experience. Over the years, not much has been beyond our scrutiny, and we have grown into a faith that I doubt even Servetus would recognize today, where Christianity has been decentered in favor of a more interfaith and interspiritual approach, rooted in our actions rather than our common belief. Truly, Unitarianism and Universalism were born of the Enlightenment, the 18th century intellectual movement that believed in the sovereignty of reason in the pursuit of knowledge. Reason was raised to a pinnacle, becoming one of the primary, if not the primary way through which the educated classes obtain knowledge. Philosophers such as René Descartes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Immanuel Kant asked questions rooted in a rationalistic and scientific framework, one that saw an objective body of knowledge as not only being possible, but preferable. And in the religious realm, thinkers such as Arthur Schopenhauer, William Ellery Channing, and Hosea Ballou did the same to beloved religious doctrines. As a result, for budding religious scholars like myself, reason became not only a possible, but a preferable means by which one can obtain religious and spiritual knowledge. And it means that doctrines that no longer serve us, that no longer seem true given new knowledge obtained in other fields of study, could be questioned and either revised or discarded. Though, as my childhood church demonstrates, the dogmatism of the past didn't completely disappear, and Thomas Jefferson's prediction that Unitarianism would one day become the religion of the United States never quite came true. It was definitely a more balanced and holistic view of truth, and dissent became not only possible, but virtuous in the Western intellectual landscape. The hope for many was, and continues to be, that if we could just use our rationalistic, logical minds enough, we could defeat the tenets of irrationality and dogmatism, and thus create a world more rooted in reality, more reverent to the here and now, and more compassionate towards people from all backgrounds and identities. In other words, logic and rationality could make the world a better place, a place rooted in more objective assessment of reality. And that's what I thought. If I took enough logic and critical thinking courses in college and read enough books, I would be able to not only root out the irrationality from my psyche and become a better person. In many ways, I was seeking the same thing as I did as an evangelical: perfection, to create a person who, in the words of The Who, won't get fooled again. Surely if I trained my mind to think more rationally, I would be better off all around, and I could make a difference in a world that I wouldn't hurt other people the way I was hurt. And I don't want to downplay those years, because they've certainly been formative. But I do want to fast forward to my graduate stories. And I realized, as I was writing papers defending the idea that Tom Sawyer wasn't real, that people trained in rationality and logic are just as prone to errors as the rest of the population. I don't want to disparage the whole of philosophy. There's some really good work going on there. But I soon realized that rather than exchanging irrationality for rationality, I was encountering just as much, if not more, faulty thinking in the field as I had as an evangelical. And when I would try to write papers talking about this, I was told they were not philosophically interesting. What I've come to realize is that the person who believes Tom Sawyer is real has made an underlying assumption that the very structure of language reveals to us what is real and what is not. So if I say Santa Claus couldn't make it to the service this morning, the very structure of my language is telling you that Santa Claus is real in this person's view. I looked around before I said that to make sure there weren't any little ones. That's a huge assumption, though. One I'm not sure could be backed up outside these linguistic experiments. If I go to all the places Tom Sawyer supposedly went, I will not find evidence of his existence outside books that came from the mind of Mark Twain. So one must ask, can we really tell what is real and what isn't simply by examining how we talk about it? I know I'm leaving aside the possibility of living in our minds in this explanation, but for these purposes, I'm defining existence as having a sort of being in our world comparable to how you and I are alive. This whole line of reasoning taught me something, that reason is a tool, and it depends upon us knowing a little bit about the world already. Babies aren't the most rational thinkers around because they don't know a whole lot about how the world works yet. But as they learn about the world, as they learn about their surroundings, they become better able to reason about the universe. They won't be perfect, but they will be able to reason from their experience and beliefs. And we can tell that reason is only a tool and not an objective access to knowledge because it does not lead to similar results in different people. I think you need only look to our political landscape for evidence of that. Thus, the person who believes that language offers us access to what exists will come to different conclusions than someone like myself, who thinks that it's very possible to create a linguistic concept that doesn't have objective reality. So what's the lesson in this? The lesson in this is that it creates issues when we assume that our subjective reality is objective and we use reason to dismiss the experiences of others. The old example that I like to use in this case is rooted in the history of Unitarian Universalism. When many Unitarians and Universalists in the late 19th century and early 20th century supported the eugenics movement, the notion that we should try to use genetics to create a perfect human race through forced sterilization, often targeting Black, Indigenous, people of color, the disabled, and immigrants. Its pinnacle perhaps came from Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was himself a Unitarian, who framed it as an issue of public welfare in his majority opinion in the case of Buck versus Bell, which has since been called one of the worst cases the Supreme Court has ever decided. In the words of Holmes, 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. These are people who thought they were living by reason. And they were reasoning as best they knew how, using racist, xenophobic, and ableist premises that assumed there were just certain people who were destined to poverty, crime, and a life of pain because of bad breeding. They thought they were acting compassionately, and their reason told them the right thing to do was to prevent such people from being able to procreate. Though we now recognize this largely as dehumanizing and frankly disgusting, it made complete sense to people as a solution to the social problems surrounding them. And sad as it is, it was really only the rise of Adolf Hitler that changed our minds. I would argue that reason can be used to support a vast number of pre-existing beliefs. In fact, I'd argue that my childhood church in some ways was acting rationally from their pre-existing beliefs. You and I may disagree with them and even think their beliefs are harmful, but if you start with the premise that the scriptures are literally true, it's very reasonable to come to some of the conclusions that they have. The problem isn't necessarily with their use of reason, but with the underlying premises that have led them to those conclusions in the first place. All of this isn't to discourage us from using reason and rationality. I won't be stopping anytime soon. But rather to recognize that it can very easily become an idol that props up our current beliefs and prevent us from realizing when we're wrong. If we can see reason as the tool it is, I think it can help in clarifying our thinking and actions and deciding what we should and should not do in everyday life. For example, if I believe that compassion is a virtue I should live by, I can use reason to extrapolate how to live compassionately in my everyday life. This must be balanced, though, by a willingness to question what we think we already know. If our reasoning has led us to act in ways that are contrary to our values, or to believe things we have no evidence for, we must question those beliefs. The danger is that, as we saw last year when I preached on the Dunning-Kruger effect, it is often very difficult to tell when we're wrong, or even having a reasonable disagreement. After all, not everyone needs to believe the same things in a civil society. We need to develop practices that help us examine the assumptions we reason with. Part of this is surrounding ourselves with people we have reasonable disagreements with. This doesn't mean you need to go hang out with neo-Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan, because I don't believe all beliefs are created equal. But it doesn't mean I have to agree with everyone in my life. I think that's why I love Unitarian Universalism. Because through it I get to talk with a lot of people I disagree with on a weekly basis. I bet some of you are even disagreeing with me right now. We learn from each other and we affirm that our common values can still help us create a better world despite our disagreements. I think our fellowship would be a very boring place if we all agreed with each other. Make no mistake, this is a radical act, one you will find very little support for in the world at large. We so often learn to fear those who disagree with us, to engage in defensive postures at even the smallest disagreements. But what if interfaith dialogue became the norm rather than the exception? What if we could befriend people who look and sound very different from us? And for me, what if I could learn to live in the discomfort of someone who believes Tom Sawyer is real, even if I believe the entire belief is based on a mistake? But also, don't forget to engage the other parts of your intellect. Autumn is the season of balance. And don't forget that our reason needs to be balanced with emotion and intuition. If I believe every person has inherent worth and dignity, my horror at watching a person being mistreated because of who they are isn't a rational act. Emotionality is not the same as rationality. Yet the emotion can move toward our rationality towards building a more just world where all people are valued, where everyone is treated with respect and equity. My journey through philosophy and theology, through a rationalistic framework, has, without a doubt, made my life better and made me a better person. But that doesn't mean I'm done learning and growing. And I hope I'll be changing my mind a lot more in the future, learning new things for the reason of my life. After all, isn't that what makes this life so interesting? That even if I live 1,000 years, I will only ever understand a small part of the universe. And there will always be some mystery to make life interesting. May it be so. Our closing hymn is number 300, With Heart and Mind.
A mind that's free to seek the truth, a mind that's free in age and youth, to choose a path no threat impedes, wherever light of conscience leads. Our motives guide so we could be a church where every mind is free. A heart that's kind, a heart to search, makes love the spirit of our church, where we can grow and each one's gift is sanctified and spirits lift, where every door is open wide for all who choose to step inside.
Please join us, or join me, in extinguishing our chalice. You will find the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be with us, or stay with us, as our guest today after the service for our coffee hour right here. This is an opportunity to check in with folks about the service and how their week has gone. As we move into coffee hour, please help our volunteers by bringing your chair to the Bush Center. And if you are not signed up for our email list, please make sure to do so to receive updates about ways to connect with this fellowship. You can find information on signing up at our website, auuf.org/subscribe. We do have a couple of announcements. And this is from the Healthy Relations team. And it reads, handling conflict is a healthy and constructive manner. It's important to the overall health of our fellowship. AUUF has a healthy relations team that can help. Step 1 is to speak directly to the person you have a grievance about with. If you are uncomfortable doing this, it is fine to bring a friend for support. Members of the Healthy Relations team are also happy to support you. If step 1 does not resolve the issue, step 2 is to contact anyone on the Healthy Relations team for help. The Healthy Relations team members are Reverend Chris Rothbauer, Temeskin Samuel, Sally McCreary, and Emily Levant. We are here for you. Another announcement. In case you haven't read the announcement from the regathering team, we currently plan on meeting in the sanctuary for the first time in 2 weeks on November the 7th. This is to allow some space for the number of new COVID cases in Auburn to continue to drop. We will be at half capacity, which is around 55 to 65 people, and will continue to require masks on AUUF property. We will also continue to have a virtual option for those of you who are unvaccinated, immunocompromised, I hope I said that right, or who are feeling sick. We really are excited about being back together in the sanctuary.
Please join us now for our sung benediction.
Go forth into the world in peace, in peace. Be of good courage, hold fast that which is good, Lord. Go forth into the world in peace, in peace. Love of people rejoicing in the power of the Spirit. Go in peace.
Our benediction is from Ma Teresa Tet Castillo Gallardo. Some came here to be blessed with answers in a tumultuous world. Let us hope too, however, that many of us have been blessed with questions to direct us with a clarity of mind, to steer our logic towards kindness and justice always. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace.
I can remember.